Well, I've always been very mindful of the advice that's inherent in the phrase, there's none so pious as the recently reformed. Because we all have that friend. We all know that guy who has found CrossFit or has found, Game of Thrones, and he just won't shut up about it. Well, I don't want to be that guy, but I've found something in local food that has truly inspired me, changed my life, and is driving me today. But I'm recently reformed. 2 years ago, I was the co-owner and managing partner of a 20-person advertising agency. I'd spent about a decade building it, had fantastic clients, incredible employees, a great partner, and then I sold it all. I sold it all to start a little bitty company called Local and Fresh, whose sole purpose is to build a stronger local food network. That's not what people said when I first mentioned it. They thought I was crazy, but I'm not crazy. There's a method to the madness. There's a logic behind it. As Churchill said, I've heard the clanging gong of self-preservation when it comes to saving our local food network. And it all started with a disposable plastic fork. My sister lives down in the States, so I've had the opportunity over the years to go down and visit her. And I always love going to the States. It's the little differences. You cross over the border, and that first convenience store you go to, where there's a shelf, and they've got whiskey, handguns, and 6 kinds of Oreos that you've never seen in Canada. But I also love the States for the predictive power that it had. Every time I went down there, it was a chance to see trends down there that eventually would come back up here. And that was pretty handy in the agency world. So a couple years ago when I was down there, we went to a fast food restaurant. And it was a little slice of America kind of fast food place. And being a healthy guy and a proud Canadian, I chose the healthiest thing on the menu, which was the poutine. And it came with a disposable plastic fork. So when it arrived, I dug into those delicious cheese curds and snap! The forks broke off. The tines had broken. And I pulled the fork out and took a closer look at it. And it was one of those white ones, and it was see-through. The plastic was so thin and so cheap, it was useless. It was a non-functioning fork. And I was struck in that moment. What if the profit motive is played out? What if that linear pursuit of profit year over year over year, linear pursuit of growth year over year over year, that has been a virtuous cycle in our economy, what if it's played out? What if it's now become a vicious cycle where trying to find another nickel in profit is starting to cut away at the very quality of the products that we use? So when I got home to Canada, I started to look and see, was this in fact a trend? And I didn't have to look much further than my own house. I just moved from an old 50s house to a brand new house, one of those little tiny boxes on the hillside. Lovely looking house. But when you scratch a little closer, in the old house we had hardwood floors from the 50s, and they were like 1.5 inches thick of oak. You could drop a transmission on them and they were good. In the new house, and we've got 2 boys, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, they're hardwood floors, but it's hardwood floors. You drop a grape on them, and they dent. The floors, not the grape. The grape is fine. And the siding looks just like that siding on my 1950s house, except when you get real close. It's made out of the same plastic as that fork. It's seasonal siding. You have to bring it in the winter because it doesn't do well in the cold. But I could go on in my old man rant as I looked around and saw that the profit motive was chipping away at the quality of products. But more to the point, what about some more important products than hardwood or siding? What about food? Well, that set me on a bit of a journey to learn more about the food that we eat. And I have to admit, none so pious as the recently reformed. I had no clue about food. I don't know how I got to be so ignorant about food, but I had no idea where it came from, how it was made, what we grew in this province. So I did a deep dive on the food system and had some interesting opportunities to find 3 things. I found wonder, I found a bit of fear, and then I found anger. The wonder came from seeing what we've built, just the sheer scope and size of the food system that feeds us. In the span of one human lifetime, we've changed how we eat, what we eat, and where it comes from. In less than 80 years, we've completely changed it. Betty White is older than our current food system. It's amazing. I took a tour of one of the big distribution hubs for one of the really big boxes, where at this facility, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of double 53-foot trailers rolling through every day distributing food. There's an entire room dedicated to the purpose of taking bananas flown in from South America or shipped in, gassing them to ripen them, then distributing them out all over Canada, where they're sold for 77 cents a pound. That's amazing that we can do that. My wife and I went to another big box, one of our favorites, the one that has lots of 3-packs. And middle of winter, minus 30. And there was a basket of blueberries from Chile. It was the size of my head, and it was $2.99. Isn't that amazing that we can do that? But then you start to think a bit about, can we keep doing that? How do we do that? What are the compromises along the way to achieve that? That seems impossible. So the more I looked into it, the more I became afraid. That's where the fear kicked in. This beautiful and amazing machine that we've built, called the current food system, has 100,000 little teeny cogs and parts in order for it to keep moving. And at any moment, any one of a dozen spanners could drop into the works and jam up the whole thing. Whether that's climate change, where, for example, the almond crop is now consolidated into pretty much one giant farm in California, where it happens to be hit by a drought. Or whether it's the price of oil. It's down now, but when you're shipping food thousands of kilometers, oil prices are a factor. So that led me to a very personal question. I mentioned my 2 boys. I started asking myself, how would I feed my family if the big boxes were gone? And then I got angry. I got angry about, now that I knew what this food system was doing, that my choices were so limited. I started being that pious guy. Every time that I got a chicken breast that was so plumped up with saline that when I barbecued it, it turned into a little teeny lump of hormones, that I'd be on my high horse of indignation. And every time I bit into a tomato that tasted like cardboard, I'd be raging in righteous indignation. But there's a funny thing about anger, that often it's connected to guilt. If you've ever caught a 6-year-old with his hand in the cookie jar, you know what I mean. His first reaction is, no, I didn't. Yes, you did. I can see you. Your hand's right there. His reaction is anger because he knows he's guilty. So I started thinking, you know what? I'm guilty. We're guilty. Our food system sucks, and it's our fault. There's no big conspiracy of corporations to try and wreck food. They're simply responding to the signals that we send them as consumers. There's not 2 guys in a boardroom somewhere who are sitting around high-fiving each other about, man, did we wreck the chicken? The chicken now can't even stand, its breasts are so big. We wrecked that one. What's next? Penguin meat. Have we thought about penguin meat? That's not happening. Corporations aren't that smart. They simply respond to the signal that we send them as consumers. When I buy those blueberries for $2.99, somewhere back at HQ is getting the message, well, I guess he's cool with flying in blueberries from Chile. Guess he's okay with ethyl bromide. Maybe he doesn't know about that, but whatever, he bought them, make more. We send those signals to the system, creating the problem that we're in. So where does that leave us then? Well, it leads us to local food, which at this point in the journey, I'd gone all in. I'd sold all my shares and had dedicated myself and my time to trying to build a company that would preserve and build a stronger local food network. I just didn't quite know what that was going to be. So, being a madman, what do? When in doubt, poll. So I commissioned a poll within Citrix of Saskatchewan residents, asking them about local food. So we found that 90% of Saskatchewan residents said, yes, we love local food, we'd like to eat more. Local food is about 2% of the market. There's a bit of a disconnect there. The question is why? Well, the survey asked that. Turns out there are 3 main factors: convenience, supply, and price. Well, convenience, I understood. I got that. As a busy guy with 2 boys, I understood that as a consumer. Trying to eat local was really, really hard. You know, having to run to 4 different places, 2 different markets to find what I was looking for, or doing that cash deal in the alley with the guy for chicken, it didn't feel good. And we've all grown accustomed to the 45,000 plus items available in that single spot at the grocery store. So I got that. The second issue was around supply. And supply is a tough one, right? Whenever you want it, you want it. Is it available? Supply and demand. Again, we've grown accustomed to having food available whenever we want it in great supply. We're almost entitled to it. Like we feel entitled, you know, it's the middle of winter in Saskatchewan and, oh my God, they don't have any guavas. What kind of store is this? Like when you know the logistics of what it takes to get a soft fruit all the way around the world to the store, but we're entitled to that now. We've grown accustomed to a better supply system. So, and the third one was price, but those first 2, that was the aha moment. Okay, there's the business model. There's the business model for local and fresh. Make it more convenient for people by offering online ordering, home delivery. You can order in your pajamas and it comes right to your house. And using technology to manage supply and demand, to better connect consumers and producers to make sure we can grow that local food network. But still leaves price. I have to take a breath on price, because don't get me going on price. The first thing about price for me is that price is not value. That fork in Milwaukee that I got at the fast food place was probably a hell of a price, but it was a useless fork. Price isn't value. The second is price perception. I know from my marketing experience that there's a ton of work that goes into maintaining the perception of a price. I mean, even when you look at the labeling, and it's got it in kilograms and grams and parsecs and British stone, and you have, it's on purpose to confuse you about the size. So price perception is an issue. And the price of local food continues to come down in the face of what's going on in the consolidated industry. What do you think the price of almonds is going to be when that entire crop is wiped out? Just last month, the price of chicken went up 18% in the grocery store after one of the huge barns was avian flu swept through. Same thing happened about a year and a half ago with pigs, where there's like 2 giant barns now that are controlling pigs. They both got this pork virus. Supply goes down, price goes up. But did you notice in the store what they did? The price of bacon went up, but the package size came down ever so slightly. You probably didn't notice that there's 2 or 3 strips less. Anyway, my main point would really be, why is price even a part of this discussion? What could be more important than the nutrients we take into our body to feed ourselves? What did I spend on iTunes last month? What did I spend on coffee this week? Yet I'm going to quibble over a nickel on the food that's sustaining me and my family. Why has price become a part of this discussion? If I were to ask you to do a bit of an exercise, think of the best meal you've had with your family in the past month. You got it? Now, if I were to ask you, what made that a great meal? I'd probably hear about taste, probably hear about flavors, what was in the meal, who was around the table, the fact that it was Grandma's recipe for scalloped potatoes. I probably wouldn't hear what made that meal really, really great was that the chicken was $1.85 a pound. We consume food emotionally, relationally, with taste, flavor. There's actually science that says the flavor of food is improved when it's made by someone or produced by someone you have an emotional connection to. That's why mom's sandwiches are always the best. Yet, we purchase food transactionally. We buy it by the commodity, by the pound, always seeking the cheaper cost. So, what's the bottom line? The current food system sucks, it's not sustainable, and it's our fault. We're sending the signals that are causing this to happen. But the good news is, it's our fault, so we can do something about it. More and more people are coming around to the logic of local food. And it goes something like this. Health is wealth. If you don't have your health, you have nothing. Food is a major determiner in your health. The current food system is at risk and under threat from a number of factors like climate change and oil prices, or even the profit motive that's starting to chip away at the quality of the food that we eat. Local food remains that last bastion of quality, nutrient-rich, dense food. Yet, it's at risk as we as consumers continue to send the signal to the market that we want blueberries for $2.99. But every day, you have a choice, at least 3 times a day, in what you eat. We really have no choice in not eating. If aliens landed on the planet and took over all the capitals of the world, and you're watching it on the news, you'd still have to make supper that night. Every day, you have a choice in what you eat, which means every day you have a chance, 3 times a day at least, to send a signal to build a stronger local food network. And I'm just pious enough to urge you to do so. Thank you.